Okay, great. President Warren, it looks like the meeting is recording and all the participants are out of the waiting room.
Okay, thank you very much. To call to order Borough Council Workshop Meeting of April 7, 2021. Begin with a roll call.
President Wireman.
Here.
Vice President Cresser. Vice President Cresser. I see that he's here trying to unmute. So I'll go on. Councilmember Delizio.
Here.
Councilmember Ferguson is absent. Councilmember Stevens.
Here.
Mayor Kaler.
Here.
Going back, Vice President Cresser
Here.
and Manager DeFinis.
Here.
Thank you. Have this evening's agenda that was part of the package, and understand at least with the distribution of the email, there was no changes at that time. So I have a motion to approve the agenda.
Make the motion.
Second.
Second.
Who's, you gotta help me with the second. Was that Larry?
Yes.
Motion by Counselor Cresser, second by Counselor Stevens. Thank you. We would like to make one change in the order and move item 7 for the presentation up to right after our announcements, so that we can get those folks underway and departed if they so choose. So with that change, is there any other additions? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion's been approved. Item 2 on the agenda is our public input time. Anyone wishing to address council, please state your name and address.
At this time, President Wireman, I see that Mr. Wilcox has his hand raised. So Mr. Wilcox, you can lower your hand and address Borough Council and Mayor Kaler at this time.
Okay, thank you. Owen Wilcox, 32 East School Street. Just want to thank the council. It looks like there's going to be a presentation from the municipal party in regards to the air ordinance. So hopefully that's informative. The other two things I want to comment on or possibly ask questions if I could. In reviewing the packet, I noticed in the Public Works report, there was reference to placing millings in alleys in the borough. And I guess I was just curious if different classifications of alleyways in the borough, because I remember at one point I had asked for perhaps the same thing to fill some holes in the alleyway on the, I guess it would be the east side of East School Street. You know, I think at the time I was told that, you know, can't really do it because it's a private alley. So yeah, I don't know if there are different classifications of alleys, but certainly if that's something that the borough is able to do. I think I've seen them on the opposite side, filling the alleyway that's shared between you know, East School Street and the first Township Road. I think I forget the name of it, but and then the other thing is kind of a request if the borough can look into one of the kind of byproducts of, you know, the pandemic and returning to school and the distances, and is most of the kids on East School. I can't say most, but there's a number of kids on East School and Orchard Lane may have previously taken the bus and now walk to avoid crowding on the bus. And the crosswalk at West School that crosses North Main. I don't know if the borough can look into possibly getting one of them, step and locks that say, yield to pedestrians in the crosswalk, or, I'm sure that's much less expensive than maybe one of the blinking signs, but, crossing there, in the morning and in the afternoon, is sometimes a challenge because, people are always in a rush to get somewhere. So that's all I have for birds night. So thank you again.
Can we provide a reply on both those questions, please?
Well, John, with regard to Public Works and the signage for Orchard, we'll definitely take a look at that. So I know we've talked about that in the past.
Okay, good. The Public Works Committee work on that road crossing on North Main Street, discuss that.
Yeah.
Thank you. And about the alley pothole, has there ever been some of the filling going on there? Steve,
John.
you know offhand?
I'll have to get with Steve on that and find out why we didn't do it previously and see if we can add it to the list of alleys that we do.
Okay.
This is the first time I'm hearing that he was told that it's a private alley. Basically, all the alleys are private. So we'll look into it and take care of it and report back.
Great, thank you. Nothing else, Jamie? We're good?
I do not see, if Mr. Wilcox is done addressing council, I do not see anybody else
Okay,
who has their hand raised at this time.
very good.
This guy I don't like.
Okay, then we'll go forward with our announcements,
know.
Mr. DeFinis.
Okay, sorry about that. Next council meeting is April 21st. Regular meeting at 7:30. Herc is scheduled to meet Wednesday, April 26th at 8 a.m. or April 28th at 8 a.m. The Planning Commission is scheduled to meet May 3rd at 7 p.m. I'm sorry, the Borough Council meeting and the Herc meeting and the Planning Commission meetings are all Zoom meetings. Registration is required, and the Planning Commission meeting, some of the attendees may appear in person as they have presentations to make.
Okay,
I asked you about that. You said you
anyone
were
have any other dates or announcements they want to highlight? If not, as suggested, we're going to move forward with item 7 on the agenda at this time and have a presentation from Hatfield Township Municipal Authority on the sewer lateral repair ordinance. And we'll turn the floor over. Mike, I don't know if you want to make introduction, please.
So this evening, attending the meeting are Paul Mullen, the solicitor for the Hatfield Township Municipal Authority, Pete Dorney, the director of, is that your title, Pete, exactly?
Yeah. Yep.
Executive Director of the
Yep.
Hatfield Township Municipal Authority. And you all know, most of you should know Chad Camburn, the borough engineer. And the reason why they're all here is that previously we discussed this sewer lateral issue. And what we did here in-house is had staff review the the sewer lateral ordinance as well as other lateral as directed by Borough Council, other lateral ordinances within the county. And there's at least 13 here that we have as templates, as well as the information that Mr. Wilcox had provided. And then we have the adopted township, Hatfield Township version of the sewer lateral inspection program. So with that, I'll let Paul take it over, and Paul and Pete, and then Chad, if we have any questions of Chad, we can also have him chime in.
Okay, thank you, Mike. If anybody has any questions of me as I'm going, feel free to put up a hand or just let me know. But I understand you've already seen at least once a copy of this ordinance, and essentially what we are looking for is a lateral inspection ordinance, which is just that. It inspects the private laterals of any property which discharges into the borough's conveyance system, which then discharges into the Hatfield Township Municipal Authority's treatment plant. And what we're looking for is I&I, which is inflow and infiltration, which is essentially groundwater that gets into the sewer lines. We only have a certain permit that we are allowed to treat every day, and we have to make sure we don't go over our permit amount. So if we actually get groundwater into the system, that can cause fines and overflows from DEP. So DEP is the Department of Environmental Protection, and they are pretty much driving the ship on this one. Initially, they had noticed that our flows were significantly higher on wet weather events, and they had, during phone calls when we were talking about certain projects, reached out and said, hey, you might want to do a lateral inspection ordinance. As Mike has already said, there are 13 of them already adopted in the county, which was news to me. I thought it was 11, but Jamie's a much better researcher than I am, and she found 2 others that I didn't know were there. But essentially, DEP originally was just poking us, saying, hey, you really want to take a look at this to address your I&I issues. And more recently, they have started putting comments in our Chapter 94 reports. Chapter 94 report is just an annual report that details the total flows going through the plant, as well as projected flows into the future. And they have put comments in our Chapter 94 report reviews saying, we want you to take a look at a lateral inspection ordinance and talk to the municipalities who are discharging to you. The reason they're coming to us, the authority for ordinances for municipalities, is because we have the discharge permit. We are the easy person for them to get to say, okay, yeah, this is your plant. You need to take actions to make sure you stay within your permitted flows. And what we don't want to see happen, as East Norton and Cheltenham can tell you, DEP has the authority to actually issue an order which requires every resident or every business in the borough to have their laterals inspected. And East Norton and Cheltenham ignored them, said, yes, we will get this done. It never got done, and DEP ended up issuing that order. And you can imagine how the residents felt getting that order and having everyone, doesn't matter if your house was built within the last 6 months or not, you had to have your lateral inspected. It was a blanket order for all laterals that were in the service area. So what we have come up with, we think, is the least impactful ordinance to both the borough as well as the residents of the borough, because it's only triggered on the sale of a property. So essentially what will happen is, and again, I'll get into the guts of the ordinance in a little bit, but essentially anytime a property is transferred, you have to go out and get the lateral inspected, and Pete can give a little bit more detail on that when he jumps in. But essentially what happens is the lateral is televised, looking for leaks or cracks or things of that nature. And if it's determined that a lateral is defective, it needs to be replaced or patched or something. And the reason we think this makes the most sense at transfer is, one, typically there's money on the table when you have a transfer. Again, this isn't going to hold up sales. Basically, what can happen is they will end up escrowing the money at settlement. So it's not going to hold up any transfers, but also the person who is leaving the borough is generally the person who is footing the bill. And what it does is put the person who's coming into the borough on proper footing with a properly functioning lateral. And so we think that is the least impactful ordinance that we know DEP will accept. They have accepted this in other municipalities. And again, we don't want to see DEP coming in doing a blanket wide order requiring every borough resident to have their lateral inspected. And the reason we're coming to the borough is we know you guys have I&I issues. Pete's going to put up some charts in a little bit that'll actually show you your flows on wet weather days. But the authority has seen your flows spike at 8 to 10 times during certain wet weather events over what it is permitted to discharge. And as council may know, in 2018 and 2019, in 8 of the 12 months, you were actually over your flows per our agreement. And in 2020, 6 of the 12 months, you were over flows. And what that results in every year is an excess flow charge that the borough has to pay. Now, the authority has waived that over the last, over those 3 years, provided that the borough puts that money into I&I repairs, which the borough has done. The borough has many projects going on right now to actually address its I&I issue, but the ultimate problem is the borough lines that discharge to the authority really only account for about 50% of your flow. Everything else is coming from the private laterals. Frankly, my lateral is probably defective. My house was built in 1903. I'm sure my lateral is original from the 60s when this was put in. So there are definitely issues with the laterals. We know there are high flows and we need to have them addressed because DEP is telling us we have to. So essentially what we've come up with is, again, an ordinance that we think is the least impactful to the borough as well as borough residents that pretty much addresses laterals on a sale, a per sale business. Pete, I'm gonna let you jump in on the flows before I get into the guts of the ordinance itself, unless any of the borough has any questions, council members.
Paul and Pete, this is Jason Ferguson. Yeah, I have a couple of questions if we can talk through those before we get into the specific, before we get into the nuts and bolts. Do we have anything from DEP that says if we implement this kind of ordinance that they're not going to mandate it anyway?
No, we don't have anything specifically in writing that they'll say we are not going to do it, but what they have done in the past is, shoot, I'm forgetting off the top of my head, but municipality Plymouth was having an issue. They adopted it. DEP has not gone after them since. They have been able to show that their flows get lower as they're addressing the laterals one by one, and also they're doing their own repairs to their own system. But basically, DEP wants to make sure we are not ignoring them. Again, as I said, East Norton and Cheltenham just flat said, yeah, we'll do it. They never took any steps. And again, everybody in the watershed had to have their laterals inspected.
Well, would it be prudent to kind of get some sort of, I don't know, guarantee or some sort of information from them, detailing to them, hey, this is what we're doing. If we put an ordinance in place, this is what the borough's already doing. Can you come back and let us know that you're not going to mandate this to every resident?
I doubt they would put that in writing, but what will happen is what we want to see, and what we already told the township, we want to be able to put in our Chapter 94 report that these ordinances have been adopted. And ultimately what's going to happen is we suspect that will no longer be a comment in the Chapter 94 report saying you need to adopt these things. I mean, as long as we're showing them that we're taking steps to take I&I out of the system, we believe that should suffice. We can certainly request it. I don't think they would ever put that in writing just because it's DEP. And if they said, yeah, we're never going to come after you, and then there's actually a major sewer overflow event, they're going to take action. So I don't think they would put it in writing, but at the same time, they won't keep putting in writing that we want to see you adopt this.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the part of the reason I'm asking that question is because properties don't seem to move fast in the borough. I mean, there's not a whole lot of properties up for sale at any one time. So, my fear would be is they would come back and say, well, yeah, we know you're going to do this when people sell your properties, but, your properties don't move. We want more action sooner. So that would be my fear if we don't have something from them.
Agreed, and I understand what you're saying. I think, again, with the borough's case, we being the borough, I don't think have had any actual SSOs. And Mike or Steve, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but The only way I think DEP would take the action you're saying is if there was actually a major overflow event. And if there is one and it's not caused by, some root blockage or something like that, I don't think they would just say, okay, we're making every resident get it done. But again, we can certainly address it with them. Like I said, we are absolutely planning on putting this in our Chapter 94 report. Hatfield Township has adopted it. We're already talking to Hilltown Township as they discharged us as well. So we're talking to them about the ordinances as well.
So what you're saying, it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like because they haven't already given us warnings in the past, we're taking more preemptive action in the borough at least, that you think that will prevent them or at least give them reason not to give us any kind of requirement like that.
I do. Well, Pete's about to jump in, but what we saw in East Norton, we represented East Norton, and they did not address the issue. DEP kept basically the same way we started, making little comments here and there, then starting to put letters in the Chapter 94 report, making comments about it, wasn't addressed. And then there was a major event and DEP said, okay, you haven't done anything, so here's our order.
And this happened over like several years?
For us in Hatfield, it has been several years that they've been requesting it. In East Norton, I think it was over about a 2-year period.
Okay.
Hey, I'll jump in a little bit here. Can you hear me? Because I'm on a phone, actually. We've been working with DEP for a number of years as far as our issues with surcharging in the sewer lines, and this surcharging went all the way up as far as the borough. So, as you know, you the borough, contributed to the new interceptor from Orville Road up to up past the borough, which helped a lot as far as the flow getting down to the plant. But what's happened over the year is that a lot of these flows, as we have been spending a lot of money on getting the flow down to the plant, more flow has gotten down to the plant quicker. And the more we put into it, the more flow we see at the plant. So we spent $8.5 million on storage tanks, which we fill up during a heavy rain event, and then we have to put that through the plant anyway. So we've kind of lessened the issue of too much flow in the sewer lines with $8.5 million for tanks and $5-6 million for new interceptors. But that's not good enough for DEP. They want to see that flow decreased. They want to see laterals looked at. We've been looking at, from our aspect, the service laterals, the main lines. We have a crew of 4 that goes out just about every day and looks for cracks and seals cracks. We excavate and fix cracks, but the problem still exists. And because we've been proactive in dealing with DEP on specific problem areas, Lenhart Road, we put a new line in there. We're working on Pine Street area right now. We've had communication with DEP. They've been a little bit more or a little bit less aggressive towards making us do more than just a lateral inspection program for the sale of purchases. And we'd like to keep it that way, because if they clamp down on us, basically what they'll do is just say, okay, well, there's no more connections. Till you get it under control, no more connections. They did that to us in 2008, I think, when Snyder Square was being first proposed. 2004, 6, somewhere around there. It's been a while. It's been that long, I think. And we had to go on a consent order with them, and they had to basically divvy out our connections little by little until we spent $4.5 million increasing the interceptor size up to Orville Road. Once that was done, they took us off of the consent order, but it keeps going on. It's just not stopping, and in some cases it's getting worse. And DEP knows that a large amount of this flow is coming from laterals, and so do we. I've been the executive director for 26, 27 years now, and I know what we do, and I know what we see when we go televise these things, and they are problematic.
Are we able to identify any specific areas in the borough where this is happening, or we just know overall that it's happening? I kind of asked this question before, and I don't think there was a way to really answer, but I thought I would ask the question again.
I mean, we don't know that. We only see your total flows at our plant. I don't know if you have meters on your own individual system that can actually show where problem areas are or not, but I mean, your flows to the plant go through a master meter.
Okay. And then the other question I was going to ask, if we do this at sale, and obviously, like you said, the money's put in escrow, so that, you know, the new homeowner's not burdened with it, and it allows the sale to go through. It can happen at any time, even after the sale. Is there potential that once, you know, after the lateral and they get into it, there's going to be additional costs that wouldn't be covered in an escrow? I mean, does that happen?
I'm not 100% followed. If short answer is sure, something could happen. They go in and try and they think they can patch the lateral, and it ends up being that, you know, if they get in there and it looks worse than it is and they have to replace it. But typically, again, it's going to be televised, so they should have a rough idea of what shape the pipe is in and should be able to give a number on what that cost is going to be. Again, as the ordinance is written, it does require plumbers who are registered with the borough. So it's going to be people, you know, who typically do work in the borough. Part of the reason for that is you don't want some fly-by-night guy coming in, throwing out a fake number and, you know, messing with the residents. So can something pop up? Sure. Will it when a line's been televised? I can't answer that, but I would assume generally, if you know you have to replace the lateral, you're going to get a solid number from the plumber.
Well, like, I guess my concern would be is that you're going to get a cost to, let's say, just patch it. When they get into it, they realize, oh, you can't patch it. It's not going to work. There's additional costs. The property's already been closed out. Who's then responsible for it?
Well, if I represented the guy who was buying the property, I would make sure the agreement, if it wasn't done before the sale, said that the buyer or the ultimate seller is on the hook for it. Really, it's going to be, I mean, again, if I represented somebody, I would say I want the work done before settlement, simply because you don't want to run into that situation, but it would come down to whatever they put in their agreement.
I mean, there's another alternative too that I want to run by our board. I don't know if, you know, they'll approve it, but we're going to try to educate the residents on this ordinance. On the back of our bills, put information about it. And one of the things that we can put out to the residents is that if they know they're going to sell, they can go get an inspection done and go through this process before they put it up for sale. We've had several of our residents do that just because they know they were going to sell it before this ordinance even started. We've had residents call me and say that they've done that knowing that they were selling and they didn't want to leave a bad lateral to whoever bought it. We had a resident right now out on Stewart, who they just had their lateral televised the other day because they thought it was a good idea. She was at the meeting when I gave the presentation to the township, and she was having problems with, you know, the flow out of her lateral. She had it televised, and they found the problem. And the inspection for her only took 15 minutes. But she found a problem. So I think if you educate the borough residents and allow them to do this, if they know they're going to sell the house, you know, in a few months, they can get this done then, and they don't have to wait till it's up on the block and somebody has put an offer in.
That leads to the last question I was going to ask, and I apologize if I'm taking up all the time. The other council members and people that are on know that I do this all the time, so I'll just apologize up front. What kind of time period are we looking at? So, for example, if someone's going to sell their house and they get a lateral inspection done, but let's say the house doesn't sell for a year, does that inspection still count? Do we put a time period on this that says you have to have a lateral within X number of months, years? Around the sale of a house? What's the thought there?
Well, at least the way the township is run, it's when the use and occupancy permit is, it's part of the use and occupancy permit. So sale's going to happen, you need a UNO in order to move into the property. So it pretty much happens right away. If a sale falls through, again, the way it's written is you don't have to have it re-inspected within a year, I believe, is what's in right now. We also, and again, this addresses some of Mr. Wilcox's questions before, the initial draft that went out was simply that. Hatfield Township ended up beating up the ordinance a little bit. So there are now provisions in the ordinance which give a 5-year grace period. If you've had your lateral inspected within 5 years, you're good. If you have it replaced within 5 years, you're good. The one caveat being that after first sale, it has to be inspected once it's been installed, because laterals can settle. So if a lateral settles, so if a property has the lateral replaced, the very next time it gets replaced or sold, the property gets sold, we do want to inspect it, but after that, there's a 5-year grace period.
Well, I think that's for just for PVC though, Paul.
It says PVC or similar material.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's a clay lateral, it could be inspected. If somebody wants to start flipping houses and the house goes once a year, it's going to have to be inspected once a year.
Yeah.
And 5 years is a reasonable time period? I mean, I know it's hard to predict when roots are going to interact with laterals and lines and things like that.
We think it's reasonable.
Very much. They don't get into PVC that easily.
Okay.
Yeah, we think it's reasonable, and DEP didn't seem to squawk at it when it's been in other ordinances. So we know they are okay with that kind of time frame. Some are as low as 3 years. The longest one I saw, I think, was 7. I think it's 7. So we're kind of right in the middle there.
Okay.
But again, I mean, obviously this is the borough's ordinance. So, again, there are some comments you guys may want to adopt different standards. And for that, from the authority standpoint, we don't overly care. I mean, the plumbing code dictates what the lateral needs to look like. If you guys want to adopt something a little more stringent than the plumbing code, we're not going to give you grief on that. That's the borough's call, and the borough is the one responsible for looking at the laterals. So, yeah, again, the borough can obviously change the ordinance as it sees fit.
Okay.
And if you want to throw the chart up, those two charts up now, can they go up next to each other? Okay, this is our chart. The charts are look a little different because they're two different programs that do the chart. But this is basically the flow chart of Hatfield Township flow coming into our plant. This was March 24th. You can see how we're just coasting along near the bottom white line. Then all of a sudden it rains heavy. I mean, we had I forget what it was, 1.9 inches of rain, something like that. And you can see the spike of the flow coming into the plant. And then it takes a while till all the flow comes down throughout the whole township, levels out a little bit. Or actually, at that point where you see it go horizontal is where we're diverting excess flow to our storage tanks. If we didn't have those storage tanks, that excess flow would be backing up all the way through the system and most likely blowing out manholes all over the township and all over the borough. So that's what the excess flow tanks are for.
Hey, Pete,
so this is our flow.
Sorry, a couple questions. So on the graph, what are the increments we're looking at?
In this case here, we were starting at about 4 million. The bottom white line is probably 4 million. That's about what I remember that day being. And then the top line there was 24 million. The top line there was, I'm sorry, that total flow through the plant is 24 million. So yeah, that would be 24 million. And then probably that day there was 10 to 14 going to the storage tanks. One of the interesting things when I was giving the presentation to the township is somebody asked how bad the problem was, and they were surmising it was a question of whether we were 40% or 30% over our daily flows when this happened. And I said, we don't deal in percentage, we deal in multipliers. So we see at the plant upwards of also 8 to 10 on the worst days of 8 to 10 times the daily flow. So, it can go from 4 to 35 in short order. So this is our flow, and Hatfield Borough flow is part of this flow here. So if you could throw the other chart up, which is Hatfield Borough from their flow meter that we see. You can see it's pretty much looks the same. It's going from a low of probably about 0.55, 0.65, and on this particular day, it went up close to 3. This is just one day out of, that I picked the most recent one. There's been better days, there's been worse days. But you can see the chart pretty much mimics us. Generally, Hatfield Borough is about 10% of the dry weather flow and about 10% of the wet weather flow.
And on the previous chart, when you were showing that flow, once it reaches a certain level, does it then automatically start diverting to the tank? Is that what triggers that?
Yes, we can. Yeah, the PLC controls the valves and the diversion gates and everything, and holds it at whatever set point we want. And our plant can only handle about 24 MGD going through the plant. A little bit more in the case like Tropical Storm Isaias or whatever how you pronounce that. But generally, we try to keep it at 24, and then anything above 24 MGD goes to those tanks.
Okay. So if I read this correctly, we started about 4 million gallons. Is that per minute, or what's the flow?
What was that question again?
Sorry, what's the flow rate? Gallons per hour, gallons per minute?
Million gallons per day is the general terminology we use for flow. Million gallons per day, MGD.
Okay.
Well, there's a you said permitted. There's a number of different permitted flows that we have: annual averages, monthly maximums, peak daily flows. So what excess infiltration does is it goes towards all of those, but the critical one is the annual average daily flow is what drives effluent limits, drives other permit limits. And for us as a plant, that's 6.98 average on a daily basis. And our flow this year in 2020 was 6.98. So we were right on the limit this year.
Okay. All right.
Anybody else have questions from council? Okay, the only other thing we were going to get into a little bit was, and we already addressed this somewhat in that last conversation, was that the ordinance that was sent to you was also the original rough draft ordinance that was also sent to the township to get the ball rolling and start going through the process. For the township, they sent it to their planning committee. They, as I said, they whacked it up a little bit. They actually had 3 separate meetings on it, just trying to get the ordinance in a format that the commissioners were comfortable with, as well as their staff, to make sure, that it would actually work logically. So I fully expect the borough ordinance to change. Again, we added grace period in there. The township only wanted it to be arm's length transactions. So pretty much if it was a familial transaction, that is no longer covered by the ordinance. So again, it's arm's length transactions. So I would expect what you guys end up adopting will be different than the initial draft that I think you have. And I have a feeling this will probably go to one of your committees to take a look at and start hashing out the terms that make the most sense for the borough and the borough residents. But yeah, again, the ordinance for the township was about a 6-month process, several meetings, went to several committees. Pete and I think were there 3 or 4 times, and ultimately they came up with the ordinance in a format that they like. We have forwarded that to Kate, so she has a copy. As Mike indicated, he also has pulled the 13 other ordinances that have been adopted. So, the committees can start addressing them, taking a look at them and seeing what makes the most sense for the borough.
This is John Wireman. Has there been feedback in the past, whatever time frame, from realtors or title companies with, title companies in regards to where they have had to escrow, or with realtors on timing? What's our North Penn Marketplace comments about this?
Well, we haven't heard any yet for Hatfield because they just adopted the ordinance, and what they are doing is Aaron Bebros reaching out to all of the realtors that he deals with, as well as the title companies, to let them know this is now a requirement going forward. As Pete indicated, the authority is going to be putting on its bills information about this so that everybody gets aware of it. We can reach out to, who are we dealing with, Pete? Was it Plymouth? Just see what kind of time frame.
Plymouth Township, yes, yep.
Yeah, we can talk to Plymouth and get you an answer on that, on whether it's been an issue for them. Although in our discussions with them, they have pretty much said this has been working well for them.
Yes. Yeah, I was going to point that out too. I had a lot of email conversations with the inspector for Plymouth Township. He said it runs smoothly. They don't have a lot of problems with it. Yeah, and there really hasn't been any major issues.
John, if I may,
Sal looks like he has a question. You're muted, Sal. You're still. Sal, you're muted. Nobody can hear you. Hope we didn't lose him.
I sent a request to ask him to unmute. So if he hits that request, he should be able to unmute.
There we go. Okay.
Okay. They do have one big problem in Plymouth. They have 5, I guess you would call them Plymouth plumber contractors. And I just went through the sale of the house in Plymouth. Anyway, the first one was like changing the whole lateral was like 5,000 more than his second plumber. They weren't consistent. I mean, changing a lateral and getting it inspected with the camera is not cheap. But all your plumbers that we were told to utilize, they should be similar, the same. But they weren't. I'm just saying that's a financial problem, not a lateral problem. But does a seller has to know this? Actually, I think we should get plumbers that the buyer, the seller of the house can go to and feel like he's getting an honest estimate.
The way we tried to address that, again, in the ordinance, is they have to be plumbers who are registered with the borough. So it's going to be people the borough are familiar with and have dealt with. I mean, you would certainly hope, you know, if it takes $5,000 for one guy to replace the lateral, it should take $5,000 for another plumber to replace it. I don't think I've ever done a project myself where I haven't gotten multiple quotes. You know, it's certainly possible somebody would just reach out to one person and say, okay, I'll do that. And somebody else could have done it for cheaper. But the way we at least tried to address making sure that the residents are treated properly is by having, you know, it's registered plumbers who the borough has dealt with.
All right, I guess it's up to us to get the right plumbers that are honest and give you an honest quote.
And I think that's part of what our earlier discussion was in terms of timing. You know, ultimately the borough's going to, at least this was my understanding, agree with the plan and say, yes, that's acceptable, that's going to work. So, I would hope that if somebody comes in and says, we've got to tear it all out and replace it, and somebody else says, oh no, we can put a liner in it, we go with what plan makes sense. So, but I think that's something that we can work out as we go through the specifics of the ordinance. And as suggested, I believe we we probably want to put this into the Utilities Committee, which would be Jason as chairman, and I'm a member. And we'll go through the multiple ordinances that have been obtained and look at the final version of what the township put together, and then we can come back to council with some recommendations. Are there any other questions in terms of operation that Pete might answer, since we have him on with us tonight? Anybody have anything there? Okay,
I was gonna say, as you go through it, obviously, if you want either Pete or myself available again to answer questions, we certainly can be. If you guys go back live, it's about a block walk for me. Sorry, Pete, you're gonna have to truck down, but we can certainly come in and answer any questions you guys have.
thank you for that offer.
Yeah,
Okay.
the only last question I've got is it refers specifically to residential, but it doesn't say anything about commercial. Should that also be part of this as well? Did the township and other places put commercial in there too?
The township changed theirs, so the one they adopted is actually commercial. It covers all properties.
Okay.
All righty. Going once. Twice, okay, thank you again, appreciate all your time. Thanks, Paul,
Thank you,
Pete.
everybody. Everyone have a
Thanks,
good evening.
guys.
Thanks.
Thanks,
you.
guys.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All righty. Gonna pick up then with agenda item 4, reports from our committee chairs and mayor. Anyone have information to share with council this evening? No, it's been difficult trying to have any type of committee meetings. Hopefully in the not too distant future, we'll be able to meet in person.
Jason, could you update council on our meetings we've had with Brooks and bring them up to speed on what we've been discussing with them about their driveway?
Sure, yeah. So as you guys know, Brooks did some fascia work or some work on the aesthetics of the outside of their facility, and they created a problem with the height of the driveway, so that when cars were exiting, it was basically, they were kind of bottoming out. And so then they put an extension out there of asphalt into the roadway. When we met with Brooks, we pretty much said that that's not going to be acceptable and pushed it back onto them to come back with solutions. They had a couple ideas, but they were very expensive for them. And, I think the cheapest one, if I remember the numbers correctly, was like $58,000. And so it seemed as if, although they didn't ask this directly, it seemed as if they were just basically asking us to give them, make our temporary approval for what they did to be permanent. And we kind of said, no, we can't do that because you're intruding on our property, basically. So they were kind of taken back by that, but they understood. We also said to them, look, we understand that money is an issue. And if you need this to be extended, we can give you some time, although we didn't specify a period of time. We could give them time to basically work it into their budgets as well, so they could plan for it probably next year. So I thought it was a good meeting. Basically we told them, like I said, that they've got to fix their problem. And that we're not going to incur the cost to do that. So. Is that a good summary, Larry? Did I leave anything
Yep,
out?
thank you, Jason. Yep.
Great. Under public safety, have the police report, including 86 applicants for 2 positions. Whoa. Is that moving along for you? as you said, 5, 6, and 7, that would have been today that they were finishing up the oral part. Did the officers that have received COVID so far have to travel outside the area to get them, like I hear a lot of people doing? Or were they able to finally get it through Montgomery County somehow? Can't hear you, Jane.
You're muted.
Yeah,
No,
Uh,
no.
Can't
No.
hear you.
Oh, well, technical problems.
Technical,
Do you know sign language?
reboot the system.
nope. Okay. Ask her all the questions now. She has good answers. Okay, well.
She's off the hook.
Actually,
today.
does,
Going on here.
while we're talking about that, does anyone know what the date is for the completion of the new police station? I've gotten a couple questions from residents about it.
Not in the next 2 years, right?
Right.
At least.
I believe they just started the planning of it. So that it's going to be at least 2 years, probably more.
So the ground's leveled.
All right. Any other committee reports? If not, our manager's report.
So in your packets is the manager's report. Just highlight a couple things. Edinburgh Square issued a stop work order. Was issued for 2 reasons, to refund the escrow account and to provide the borough with a some type of drawing or plan for the water line usage that was put in the wrong location. So we're waiting for that so that they can proceed. Bennett's Court has delivered a preliminary updated preliminary plan to the borough. I believe they were sent out today. Garfield, the preliminary plan was the 43, that should be Roosevelt, I'm sorry. Is the preliminary plan was approved, and I believe, and I know that the applicant is working on the final plan submission. 127 Penn Avenue, preliminary discussion is being held tomorrow with staff to go over their wish list. The SEPTA property has, we have an executed license agreement with the SEPTA property. So the utilities department, the electric billing system was required extensive service during the March-April billing cycle. As of today, well, some of the residential bills were delayed a couple days getting out. And then going back, some of the commercial and industrials still have not been calculated properly, and they're working on the internal software. There's 3 components of the software that have to mesh together to get this done. And now that we have all the remaining all the remaining meters have been installed except one, we're having an issue now with some reading capabilities. So again, we were on a call today collectively, and they're working towards resolving that problem by the end of this week. The North Penn Water Authority has been replacing meters in the borough, and that has caused a little billing issue the sewer billing as well. After replacing water meters, they have to go back and then re-pull the information that's on there, and has to be provided what is the old usage and the new usage in that cycle, so that David can actually get the sewer bills out. So it's becoming another tedious and time-consuming task while that transition is going on as well. The East Lincoln Avenue Bridge replacement project has been issued a notice to proceed. Actually, they were supposed to start mobilizing this week. The ADA ramp project has been issued a notice to proceed. And the roadway resurfacing bid award is scheduled, I believe, for the May 5th workshop meeting. And then stormwater projects will be scheduled around the Public Works work schedule. Please continue to check out the PMEA website. The AMP Pennsylvania Rice Behind the Meter Generation Project. AMP and Power Secure representatives were in the borough on March 24th for a coordination meeting with staff. Power Secure is scheduled to begin site preparation on Monday, April 12th. As I said earlier, the AMI system, 1,539 meters have been replaced, and we're now operating on one automated billing system, even though we're really not operating on it yet, but totally, we're trying to work out some glitches. One meter still requires installation, and the Public Works Director is coordinating that. I believe the HERC update is attached. If you take a look at that, the HERC update is requesting that they continue with their movies in the park series in lieu of having events, and in lieu of having Founder's Day and other events, they're going to continue with the movies in the park. There'll be 3 movies, June, July, and August. And then in lieu of the Fall Fest and car show, they're proposing a end of summer concert in the park around that same time frame. So that was something that they were looking for Borough Council to consider and hopefully approve, to continue those movies in the park, and then that concert in lieu of the Fall Festival and car show. It would be in the park as well, under the same guidelines of the movie events, social distancing, wear a mask, things like that. So
Mike, was there any thought of how the music would be provided?
excuse me?
Was there any thought of how the music would be provided? Would there be a band that's hired, or what's the thoughts there?
That they were looking to hire a band. Larry, is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Any other questions on that?
Yeah, I was happy to see, I wasn't sure where we stood, frankly, with the sponsorship requests to the businesses, and where she comments here in the paragraph that found it best not to reach out this year. I think that was a good move. And then also, I don't have my binder in front of me here. She specifically asked that council acknowledge the receipt of budgeted funds for 2021 to HERC. Please accept this request. So what is that amount? Will it cover what she needs, I would assume, for the movies? And I think we had that in there.
I think-
HERC was allotted $5,000.
Okay. And then she also mentions about consolidating some funds into
Herc
one
has two-
account.
Herc has two funds. It is their grant program fund that they administer, facade improvement and
Right.
small projects fund. And then the home improvement that was a part of a cooperation with Habitat for Humanity. So combine those two funds and let Herc administer all that under one account.
Well, there's only $600 in the Habitat fund right now, and we haven't had any interest in that in probably at least 5 years, I would think.
Right. Okay. So we'll just acknowledge in the minutes that the request was received, and we'll transfer the budget at $5,000 over to her whenever that's appropriate for you.
Okay. Any other questions on that? Conferences, PSAB conference is virtual, June 7th and 8th. And I didn't have it on here. I just remembered today when I was going through some notes, the APPA conference was moved from Chicago to Orlando and will be an in-person conference. And the reason why I was alerted to again today was I've received several communications urging participation in the APPA conference in Orlando in June. It's June 20th to the 23rd. So I'll have that on the next agenda as well, if anybody has any interest. The funds for the borrowing that we did for the projects for this year was deposited on March 25th. That information's in your packet. And then the Montgomery County Boroughs Association is having a virtual meeting, and that information is in your packet as well. You have to utilize that information to access the Zoom meeting. So if anybody has any questions on anything?
Yes, Mike, I have two. Edinburgh Square subdivision says here, stop work order issued. I missed the last meeting, so can you bring me up to date why it was a stop work?
Yes, one reason was they had an outstanding balance on their escrow account that was that they hadn't acknowledged and or brought us up the value for over 3 months.
Oh.
And they wanted to start work again, but they had a negative. We were carrying them on their escrow. So that was one. And then the other issue was last year when they did they installed the water service. They had North Penn Water Authority install the water service. They didn't inform the borough that they were doing that. They're supposed to inform the borough 48 hours in advance of any work that they're going to be doing. And we conveyed that to them during our pre-construction meeting.
Okay.
And they didn't do that. And they didn't get a road opening permit for the project either. So the water lines were not put in as the plan designated. All right. So the developer said, well, it's just a field change, and the borough engineer and I are, no, we don't look at it as a field change. When you do something different than what's on the plan, we need to see some type of drawing of how you're going to remediate that. And that's why they were issued stop work order. He doesn't agree that it's, with my opinion, and the discussion that we had was not productive. So I said, okay, we have a difference of opinion here and we're at an impasse. So until we straighten it out, he was issued a stop work order.
Mike, if you don't mind me adding, this is
Please,
Chad,
thank you.
everybody. The real issue isn't necessarily the water service lines. The water service lines can go anywhere essentially because they're under pressure and you could put jogs in them and it's not a problem. The real impact is on how that affected the sanitary sewer laterals. They were, in order to install the sanitary sewer laterals to the houses with the water service lines where they were installed, as opposed to where they're supposed to be installed, they would have to put in jogs in the laterals, which you don't want because it's a location for things to get clogged. And, or they would have to put multiple cleanouts on these properties, some of them within driveways. And this relates all the way back to the initial discussion we had with the HTMA gentleman. Any locations where you have additional cleanouts, additional couplings, any bends, any loads on these cleanouts because they're in driveways are all reasons why these laterals can fail and get stormwater into them. So we're trying to avoid having what the developer calls a field change, but ultimately we call a potential problem. And it all is a result because they put the water lines in the wrong locations. So we're trying to have them reinstall these water lines in the correct location so that we can avoid the potential problems with the sanitary sewer laterals in the future.
When we looked at these plans 2 or 3 years ago, wasn't he already requesting that in the first place? Because I remember he wanted to put the sewer laterals and they were going to be angled and that was going to create a problem during the initial discussion. Am I remembering that correctly?
He had a number of different options. We ultimately settled, or I'll say approved on, what we felt was the best. So quite frankly, I can't recall the different iterations that he had throughout the years. I mean, the project went on for a number of years, but ultimately we approved, a certain design that is the most appropriate for the project. And that's not what he ultimately was planning to install.
I mean, I get the impression that he was going to install something the way he wanted to do it anyway. This just seems to be evidence of that. So
I think it's a breakdown in communication between the developer and North Penn Water Authority. I reached out to the North Penn Water Authority. They informed me that they installed it where the developer marked it in the field for them to install it. But like Mike said, I mean, we weren't notified that they were doing the work. So nobody had, from the borough, nobody had an opportunity to be out there to tell them, no, they're doing it wrong until it was already done. So Mike's doing the right thing and holding them up until it's done right, or else, you're open to a potential problem in the future.
So is the resolution changing the water lines, or can they redesign the sewer lateral?
That's what they need to provide us. We've told them they need to provide us with a plan on how they're going to resolve this. And quite frankly, if they can come up with a plan that makes sense, well then, we're not opposed to it. We're not trying to be unreasonable, but it's up to them to provide either a plan that makes sense or install it the way it was approved originally.
Okay.
And that's where it stands. It's in their hands, and it has been for a few weeks now.
Great.
Thank you. Mike, the second question, SEPTA property, license agreement executed. What's that about?
The borough has had talks for several years on leasing the SEPTA property.
Yes.
So now, because Salters vacated the property and the borough ended the lease with them because we didn't want to be paying on the lease or any obligation that we would have if we didn't have a tenant. So we have what they call a license agreement now for 6 months to try to find someone to lease that property. And then we would return to a discussion of a long-term lease with SEPTA. SEPTA wants to lease their properties to municipalities now and let the municipalities find an approved use for it. To change from what they've done in the past.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Not, we'll go to assistant managers reports.
Okay. I wanted to make a few announcements before my report, as some people on the call are having some IT issues. So I wanted to let you know that, first off, Mr. Fox is having some IT issues, but he would like to speak during the feral cat ordinance section on this agenda under old business. So he can't use the raise hand function. He addressed that in the chat with me. I told him I would let you, Council President, know that he would like to speak during that, so you can call on him, and I told him he could talk at that time. I also asked Lieutenant Robertson for the answers to her questions via chat, and she shared those with me, so I will share them with you. She said she was trying to let you know that the polygraphs will be in next week for the top 5 scoring applicants. She also wanted to let you know that they are unsure right now on the time frame of the new police building, and that most of the staff over there has gone to Lehigh Valley Hospital to receive their COVID shots. So that was her update. And as I said, some people are having some IT issues, so I shared what was presented to me in the chat.
Thank you.
Sure. So moving on to my report. I wanted to give you a brief update of the American Rescue Plan Act, which was the $1.9 trillion economic stimulus package that was signed on March 11th of 2021. As you can see in the attachment that I sent, part of that stimulus package, Hatfield Borough is to receive $328,934. Those funds, though we received them, do have a lot of stipulations, and some are very uncertain right now. I know our office the borough office has reached out to Chad, and myself, Chad, and Mike will sit down and talk about some infrastructure projects, possibly funding for those infrastructure projects to use for some of that money. There's still a lot of strings attached with the money. The Montgomery County Consortium of Communities is actually going to have someone come in our April meeting, give us as best as they can right now, a rundown of what they understand of the bill, what we can use the money on, what we cannot use the money on. Just municipalities, as you probably can guess, are a little bit unsure what we can and cannot do with the money. And we know there's some strings attached, some stipulations. So we just kind of want to be clear before we start, brainstorming ideas and projects. I've attended 3, I would say, I believe 3 webinars so far on this act. And in all honesty, maybe have received some information, but it's still very confusing. So it's just a work in progress, and we'll get through it. But as I said, we will set up a meeting with Chad in his office and try to talk about some infrastructure projects and using this funding for the future.
Who's
Jamie?
administering that for government? What department or?
Oh, so coming from like the federal level, will come down through the state, I believe. When we talked to Representative Malagari's office, we had a meeting with him last week. He believes that it would come through DCED is what he is expecting it to come through. He didn't confirm. He said he's expecting. I asked him if he could give us some updates because we're kind of unclear about it. We're unclear about what we can use the funding for. And he said they've received what we've received, just a blanket information about it. Everybody's still kind of up in the air. It was a nice thing we said at the consortium. Who should we talk to? Who can we reach out to?
Right.
President Biden. That'd be great, wouldn't it, if he could talk? So everybody's just as, I think we just have to work through it and work through the weeds and see. I mean, it talks about infrastructure projects. I brought up with Representative Malagari. talks about sewer work, it talks about stormwater, it talks about broadband. It doesn't address electric. I said, electric infrastructure, where's that? Oh, well, Pennsylvania's different. Well, we are different. I don't think, so even getting clarity on that, we need some clarity on what exactly is infrastructure. When exactly do you get these funds? You get half of it, the first 6 months, and then you have to wait another 12 months till you get the second half of funding. I guess it's all kind of in the air. I've tried to keep up with it as best as I can, and I'm sure there's people that are way more well-versed than me, and hopefully one of them will be joining the consortium. In April, it's going to be an auditing firm that are going to come. I know I've been to some things by Edward Stevens, the attorneys at law for labor law. Those things have given some, kind of general overview. But like I said, Representative Malagary believes he thinks it would come through DCED, or the Commonwealth Financing Authority, if it was going to come down through the state.
Okay.
I heard also could be dispersed like through at the county level, but like I said, he believes DCED or Commonwealth Financing Authority.
Okay. Well, it's better to be state, or even if it does go to county, than federal. So at least we have better contacts in that regard.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, sure.
Hey, Jamie, before we have that meeting, if we could get any information in writing ahead of the meeting so we can kind of read it in advance, that would be great, if it's possible. I don't know if it'll be possible or not, but.
Sure. So I can also share with you,
Report.
we have a lot of PowerPoint slides that of the webinars that I've attended. If anybody's interested, I can share those with you. It goes over allowable uses for the recovery funds, non-allowable uses, how, disbursements of money. If anyone is interested, just for knowledge and to know, I have no problem. I have maybe 3 or 4. I'll have to see how many I have on my computer, some through PSAB, PSAT, some different things that I'll be more than happy to just send a blast email out if you guys have time to just get an update on the plan.
And how did they determine the amount? $328,934.
Was it based off of your? It's part of. So if you're a CDBG community, it's based off of some type of formula with your CDBG community. And I only know that because Limerick is not a CDBG community, which means you could opt out and they can't participate in any CDBG development block grant, community housing authority. Chad might know more about this. They deal a lot with the CDBG in the area, but it was based off of that calculation. So I'm not sure why we got 300. And if you look at Limerick, not a CDBG, I believe that was based solely off their population, and they got like 1.9 million. Obviously a bigger municipality, but it has something to do with the community development block grant initiative and their calculation with like being a CDBG community.
Yeah, it certainly has to have something to do, Jamie, with population. Because if you look through the list, and I'm sure you have and I have as well, you can obviously see the more populated municipalities got more money. I don't know how the CDBG plays into it, quite frankly, with the calculation. But you're right, Limerick, they either have a very small portion of CDBG or none at all, and they certainly got a substantial amount of money.
Yeah, and just know Dan Kerr was making a comment during our consortium meeting about it, and we were talking about how it's CDBG, and he's not, and he got 1.9 million. And I know they're substantially larger than the borough. Moving on, unless you have any more questions about that. Okay, I'll make sure I get those slides out to everybody. The borough did a partnership with the vaccine with a Skip Back Pharmacy and Babs Temple, which is in Hatfield Township. So Hatfield Township worked with Babs Temple and the borough jumped on to partnership for a vaccine clinic that ran this past Sunday on Easter at their temple in Hatfield Township, also administered by Skip Back Pharmacy and Dr. Amin there. Some of our residents were able to sign up if you were phase 1A at that time, as 1B did not open until Monday morning. So 1A residents 65 and older or the qualifications were able to sign up through Skip Back Pharmacy, and they were able to vaccinate some of our residents. So the feedback that I heard was our residents were happy that we were able to partner with them. Of course, if another opportunity comes again, the borough will be more than happy to partner with Skip Back Pharmacy in the future. They're doing great work at North Penn High School and with vaccinating the community. So if an opportunity arises with us in the township, we'll be sure to let our residents know. But from the feedback that I heard, it was a successful event, and our residents are very thankful that we partnered with Skip Back Pharmacy. I wanted to let you know and give you an update that I had registered the borough for the COVID vaccine back in February when it was up and running and you can register in the county. The borough received this confirmation on Monday that our employees are eligible at this time or soon will be eligible, and to please go to the website and the link here and they can register through the county. Unfortunately, we can't register as a group, which means I can't register everybody in Hatfield Borough, including council as one. Everybody would have to go by themselves and register individually. This was dispersed to all staff, and if they were interested in getting the vaccine, they now have access and they can get an appointment through the county. I wanted to let you know to address President Wireman asked last meeting about sidewalk letters. Sidewalk letters will be going out to all residents. We are waiting to work with G&B Construction. We're getting a price quote, a bulk price quote for the entire borough for every sidewalk that was marked with an X. That letter will be going out along with their contact information. This pricing is good for any resident in the borough. I know that our letters had stated if we could have that work done by May 1st, but the paving isn't technically probably going to start maybe till summer. We're not going to award it till the May workshop meeting. So we'll have some time and our residents will have some time to take advantage of the bulk pricing. We're just waiting for that communication to come back. And as soon as that does, the letters will go out to the residents and they could jump on board and hopefully get some cheaper pricing to replace their sidewalks, the curb and driveway aprons if they had been marked by Public Works. Also, in my assistant manager report, I let you know that we are moving forward with our town hall meeting. We had scheduled our town hall meeting is going to be Wednesday, May 12th, 2021 via Zoom. It's going to be upstairs. Myself, Manager DeFinis, and Public Works Director Stephen Fickert are currently working on an agenda for that meeting that once we have together, we will share with you so you can make any suggestions or additions of what you would like communicated to residents. It's going to be held the same way as a council meeting is. We will disperse that information via newsletter, social media, our website. We want to let everybody know how they can register to join. We'll have interaction where they can see the presentation just like they would be attending a meeting, and there'll be a question and answer period at the end. Wanted to let you know, Councilmember Delicio asked for some information in my last meeting about the 309 connector route. So I wanted to include this in my report this time. Just the project overview. It gives the phase HT2. It talks about the intersections. You can see the pictures where it's Allentown Road. You can see Elroy Road, and it gives us a small synopsis of what they're expecting to have at all those intersections. Talks about the noise wall, for the residents in the area. Again, it'll go on to Cowpath, moving forward to Penn Street, Hatfield Satterton Pike. Then it'll go on and talk about the HT3, which would be phase 3 of the connector route, which will jump you off kind of by where Biggie's is now, the new CHOP location is going to be. And it talks about how you can get to 309. So I wanted to put that information so you guys can look at the small synopsis and the maps that are there, and just so you had a better idea of the phasing that's going to happen and that project that's supposed to be started this summer. Also, part of my report is the public information coordinator update. She wanted to let you know that the website, I'm sure you guys got the link, is going to be up and running soon. If you have any comments, if you could send them to her by this Friday. She's going to do some training, or she could have said the 13th, but you could send her the comments. If you've seen anything you like, don't like, let her know so she can work with Bill and they can get those updates implemented before we launch the new borough website. We're also going to be doing professional photos at the borough office for staff and elected officials on April 21st from 4 to 6. If you could let Lindsay or myself is also fine, know what time, if you have a specific time, if you're coming from work and you can only be here at 5:30 and that's the time you need to do it, let us know. We kind of just for COVID precaution would like to spread people out as best as we can. If nobody signs up for a time, we'll give you a time, just so not everybody's piled on each other at 5:45 at night waiting for the picture. It should take 5 minutes. You should be in and out and have that set up. And you also should have received an email from her containing an update on pool passes this year, which I believe is no complimentary passes, no family pass, 1 pass per family would be free. You can go on your own to get another season pass if you would like. If you have any questions about that, Lindsay's been working with Ashley, so she would be able to answer any of those questions. Also, lastly, I had one thing I didn't put on my report that I wanted to bring up. So as this year, I'm the president of the consortium. We are working on a salt bid. So Upper Dublin no longer wanted to do the salt bid. The consortium is going to take it over. We are actually have RFPs out to some engineering firms to see if they're interested in picking up the salt bid, which is basically picking up the legal aspects of it, the headaches that you don't want to do when you deal with a bid. All the great things that Chad does for us, that's what this engineering firm would do for the consortium for a salt bid. So the one question is we need a host municipality. The only thing that the host municipality would be doing would be making a motion at a public meeting to accept the awarded bid, just like we do for ADA, just like we do for paving. Whoever the engineer is will create a letter, a recommendation, and say it would go to XYZ Salt Company. Hatfield Borough would just make a motion at a borough council meeting to accept the salt bid on behalf of the Montgomery County Consortium. I was asked to ask my board this evening if that would be something that they would be interested in doing and being the host municipality. You're not liable, you're not legally liable for anything. That's something that it's worked out with the RFP and the engineer. It's just for the motion at a council meeting in September. So we just need to put that, if Hatfield Borough is okay with doing it, we just need to put that on the information that we're going to be sending out, letting everybody know that we would be the host municipality. So I'm not sure how you feel about that.
Yeah, I think as long as we can confirm that prior years, there weren't any issues, make sure Kate can take a look at it and know what's going on.
Yeah, sure. I know, in all honesty, Upper Dublin has done it for the past 28 years. And their major #1 complaint is the calls that they get about the salt. It wasn't anything more than calls, but we tried to eliminate that by saying that those calls would be diverted to the salt company per se if they were on back order, and or the engineering firm that would be taking over the RFP. It wouldn't necessarily be the person that would just be hosting, making a motion. But when that's all done, I will let them know that I just like our solicitor to look at it just to make sure. And if everything's fine with Kate, then I say Hatfield Borough will be more than happy to just be the host municipality and make that motion at a public meeting in September.
How many participate?
30, I think there's 34. There very well might be more. It's one of the larger ones. So for example, we participate in leaf bags. There's 6 of us, like out of all the municipalities in Montgomery County. Salt there's a lot, and I think a lot more are going to be joining. It's either the consortium salt bid or CoStars. That's really, those are the only 2 options. So I like it. I enjoy working with the other municipalities. I think we get a better deal, but and I think it ends up for the borough, it's a couple $1,000s in savings. For someone like Upper Dublin, it's over $20,000 a year in savings just being through the consortium and doing that bid than going out on your own. So it's definitely worthwhile for municipalities to do that. But again, I'll make sure that Kate gets the documentation that we have just so she can look over it, and she okays it. I will let the executive board know that Hatfield Borough will be the host for just the action item at one of our meetings in September.
Okay, good.
Does anybody have any questions?
Jamie, one.
Sure.
Can you bring me up to date on this sidewalk letters? Like
Yeah,
I said,
sure.
I missed the last meeting or two. So
Okay.
what does it mean?
Sure. So as part of the ADA projects and the paving projects in Hatfield Borough, sidewalks are identified that need to be replaced on roads that are being paved. So resident sidewalks will get the big white X's on them, and that means that they need to be replaced. What we try to do as a municipality is work with the awarded contractor who got the ADA bid, because they'll already be in the area, and mobilization tends to be a big cost or an additional cost for people to come in, and a lot of times they'll have extra concrete, and if they could get the extra concrete off and use it and help out our residents at maybe a cheaper price than just going with a random contractor that they would choose, we offer that to them. So letters go out to the borough residents, which is the sidewalk letters, letting them know who was awarded the bid, the contact information, and the price that they're willing to offer. If they want to take advantage of it, great. If they want to go on their own with a different contractor, that's okay too. It's just an additional service that we as the borough provide to try to get residents the best pricing that they can get.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Jamie, for the town hall event, are we gonna invite Representative Malagari and Senator Collette and then offer them an opportunity to speak at it?
Yes, when we were on the call with Representative Malagari last week, I invited him to the event. I will also do the same with Senator Collette. I know it's only on Zoom, but they will be able to participate on Zoom. I said they're able to participate if they'd like to talk, if they'd like to, share anything with our residents. Representative Malagari seemed excited and he wanted to participate. I will also reach out to Senator Collette, but as I said, Representative Malagari was informed. He's all in and he's really excited, and I'm sure Senator Collette would also like to participate. But I will make sure I reach out.
Okay.
I know it's in Chad's updates and report, but just go back one more time on the curb and ramp replacements. They're down to 3 weeks. We're still looking at the May 3rd completion date.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
go ahead,
they feel that, I'm sorry, Jamie.
Go ahead.
During our pre-construction meeting, they told us they can knock this project out in a week once they get started. It's we need to see that before we can believe it, quite frankly. But if they can get it done in a week, then there shouldn't be a concern. Everybody that was involved in the pre-con meeting certainly made them aware that public safety is of utmost concern. They have to comply with PennDOT requirements when they're within PennDOT's right of way. We're in the process now of getting PennDOT's approval for the materials for liquid fuels reimbursement. The PennDOT representative approved the asphalt already for around the curbs, and I don't believe we got a response yet on the concrete. But that's all we're waiting for at this point. There's a couple more submittals we need from the contractor with respect to traffic control, both vehicular and pedestrian, and then a few additional material items. But once we get that, then they can get moving.
So let's say half the residents want to use the contractor for the work that's needed. Is that up to them, the contractor coordinate when they would come back and do that? Are they
Yes.
going to come back multiple days and do 2-3 properties at a time? It just doesn't sound right.
They said that would be up to the resident would call, the resident would work with the contractor, and the pricing is for like a set time period. So I had asked for that question, like, hey, what if you do some of them in May and then you leave and you come back and do some of them in June? Because we did have a May 1st deadline. We said we were willing, which will be expressed in the letter, that we're willing to work with residents past that May 1st deadline, as long as you're in a contract with somebody. If you're in a contract with GMB, or whatever, or you're in a contract with X, Y, and Z company, it doesn't matter. You just have to tell us and let us know that you've scheduled the work. But the work was supposed to be, and the price is for whenever you decide to work with this contractor in the allotted amount of time. It might be May, June, and July. She hasn't gotten me her letter yet. So it's whatever that time period is, they'll come back and they might say, I'm going to do all of North Wayne Avenue on May 15th, but then I'm going to do South Farview Avenue on June 1st and get all the residents just in that area to save them on their own mobilization costs. So it's up to them. I had expressed,
Okay,
I'll do my best to transmit your information and let everybody know, but I don't want to be your scheduler and I don't want to be your middleman.
yeah,
I'll give your information to the residents and then it will be on the resident and it would be on the contractor to work it out. But she told me this is what they do in Upper Dublin every year and said it works very successfully. So I said, all right, let's give it a shot here. Our public works guys went out and measured every sidewalk, every curb, every apron that has an X on it. And we sent her a whole Excel spreadsheet with all the information. So we're just waiting for a cost. The letters are already written, ready to go. I just got to type in that cost. The letters will go out.
okay, thank you.
Sure.
Anything else for Jamie? Not, we'll get into new business category. First item is the resolution honoring Fred, number 2021-07.
This
There a
right
word?
now, this right now is just a draft I wrote. I'm looking for some more personal information. It'd be nice to see what he does, you know, outside of work. We've always done that, but just waiting for some feedback. If not, I'll tighten it up a little bit. And I know we want to do something for him when the weather breaks a little bit. We had the walkthrough, you know, in January for him, but his official retirement date, you know, will be the end of the month. And I know we were talking about maybe once COVID was a little bit more relaxed or, you know, vaccination was more readily available, we could do something outside to have a really nice going away and thank you for his 13 years of service that he has dedicated to the borough.
It's nice. I hope you can get some more info somehow from him. The first whereas in the second line, even noting the borough his childhood home was as his, was his.
Yeah, I can, I'll work on that. Was his probably.
Okay,
Noting that the borough, yeah, was his childhood hometown. I want to just put that born and raised here. You know, he always prides himself on that. You know,
Yep.
I know he moved out, but he's, you know, he knows the borough just as much as all of us who's born, raised, and still live here.
good. Anybody else on that one? Not item B. Safe digging month. Didn't know the 992,000 calls to 811, huh? Plus the ones that don't make the call and then hit something.
Interesting.
That's nice. Does this go to someone in particular?
We had just been on some communications that talked about, and it had come in the past, that they were just asking for Pennsylvania State Safe Digging Month, if you would just recognize it and submit it to the state, just so you know that you participate and you honor it. I know our guys are always doing PA1 calls. I know it's things that they do. So we thought it came in, might as well put it in front of you, and I think it's an important initiative. Always call 811. So, yep, we'll submit it. There's an email address after if you want to adopt it, to just go to just let them know that that's something that you are participating in.
Okay, thank you. Item C, zoning hearing board continuance for 461 South Main on the sign.
Well, I was at the meeting, so I will let you know. I think Kate has a small update that she had sent, but that Mike can allude to. But I want to let you know that at the zoning hearing board meeting that took place, the meeting is going to be continued to April 29th, 7 p.m. via Zoom. That was decided. Again, if you would like to register for that meeting, it's the same as it was for the zoning hearing board meeting prior. We will get that information out on all of our social media, just as we do for council meetings and the previous zoning hearing board meetings, that residents or businesses, whoever wants to attend, can register the same way that they have before. But again, the hearing was continued to April 29th at 7:00 p.m. via Zoom.
Okay. Item D, we've got some information from the Legion for the Memorial Day ceremony.
Yes, did receive, Lindsay has been after them to make a decision or give us an update on what they were going to do. So it appears as though did receive a letter late yesterday afternoon, and I'll have this on the next agenda as well. It does appear that they're going to have a Memorial Day event just at the SEPTA lot, the memorial, the military memorial down there on the SEPTA lot. So they're just going to have it there. It's about a half-hour presentation, and they will they're going to be advertising it on their website, Facebook, and in other social media outlets. So I'll get this out to you, and what they're requesting from the borough is to coordinate with the police to close the entrance to the memorial, and with the borough and the police to make sure that there's safe travel down there. And they have in their letter that face masks are required, and adhere to the social distance guidelines. So I'll get this out to you.
And there's be no parade, just the ceremony at the memorial.
Excuse me?
No parade. I was saying that it'll just
No
be the
parade,
ceremony.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Page 2. Old business, one item for the feral cat ordinance.
So this item is back on the agenda as we had a discussion previously on this item, and then Mr. Fox had provided the borough with a his feelings toward this the feral cats in this document. So I'll let Mr. Fox, I believe, has some comments and questions. I'll let him go, and then if council wants to move forward with this this type of document, this should also go back to committee and incorporate any comments that we collect along the way on this item. And John, I would probably send this to planning, building, and zoning.
Yeah, I think that's probably most appropriate.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So I'll leave it at that, and then let Jamie, do you want to let Mr. Fox in?
Yeah, he is, and I can see that he is unmuted. So, Mr. Fox, if you're able to address council and Mayor Kaler at this time.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good evening. My first question is, do we really need this ordinance? Do we have a feral cat problem? Does anybody know the answer to that?
I think one was identified, which was the reason we started to work on a draft ordinance. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I've been like you can see in my letter, last year was a disaster year for everything. That included vets that were doing the neutering. So we got a little behind there. I have been working with Forgotten Cats, they've been quite helpful at helping me capture and neuter and release. But, other than releasing them here at my place, we don't really have any place to release them. So that's, I've been feeding my group, and last week, believe it or not, somebody dropped about $100 worth of cat food off on my porch. So I know it's not just me that's concerned about them. I don't know if it's a problem or if it's a neighborhood tension between two people. So that's what I got to say about it.
I think your letter raised a number of good points and made some excellent comments, and certainly was good to know that you were working with some of these other agencies, because that was part of the discussion that councils had. What direction, where would we go for help? And I think you've already identified some of that. So certainly thank you for expenditures that you've made to take care of some of the trapping and neutering, etc. And finding a home for the cats too, which was, I guess, one of our main concerns.
Yeah.
But again, I think there was reason we want to go back to committee is to take information that you've provided, talk to some of these agencies, and maybe identify and assist with how we can deal with the remaining cats.
Yeah, there's several people that I know, several locations I know that are feeding. So I know it's not just me.
Okay. Council, do you
Yeah, I read
have
the
any
letter.
specific questions?
I didn't have a specific question. I have there was some enjoyment in the letter that was written. And I do agree with a lot of the items. I think it's for some people that are trying to help with this situation. Obviously there are some people trying to help, which is wonderful. I think some of the items that are in our draft as far as control of cats, I don't know how you control cats. They have a mind of their own. It's not like dogs. Dogs are a little bit more obedient. I never seen a cat come running to me unless it was a food situation, which they were responding to. But I can't say I've owned a cat for any period of time, so that could be a out of bounds statement on my part. But I think some of these ideas as far as microchipping and the cost of all this kind of stuff, I think it's a little over the top presently in the way that things are in this economy. I think it's just another, I think it's a hardship for people in the borough. So I would say we should target, if there's a specific area that should be targeted, but I don't think it's something that should be affecting all. Maybe perhaps just because somebody doesn't like the idea. You have any questions, ask me.
Well, John, the comment on what you just said, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that it doesn't say you can't do these things, but they have to be registered. And there's got to be some control to it as well. So I don't think it's unreasonable to do that. It sounds like there are citizens willing to step up and help, but how much harder is it for them to then register and take some ownership in the process?
And they would have to be registered with the borough, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yeah, that's how the ordinance reads.
Right. Do we do that with dogs?
You don't have stray dogs running around.
Okay.
The
Who's the, I'm sorry, again, I don't have my binder and I should already know this, but planning, building, zoning is what members?
I believe it's John and Sal. Let me look real quick.
It is.
Okay. Good. Well, again, let's, learn more, see what we can find out. Always rely on other municipalities and consortium if someone else is dealing with it, and then get more information from some of these agencies, how they're maybe dealing with other municipalities.
And that is something that staff worked on as well. There's a packet here with several feral cat or stray cat, feral cat ordinances and guidelines.
Okay. So we got information to start to digest and see what we can massage.
If anybody, if I can give any help to anybody, I'd be willing to.
Absolutely. Again, I appreciate the time and the way you put together the letter. It's nice that obviously
Very
shows
impressive.
your interest in this matter. So.
I know over at the zoo, the Cresser Zoo there, we have raccoons,
Yeah.
possums, groundhogs, of course, the deer
And foxes.
and foxes.
Okay. Yeah, not something we're going to do in the next 2 weeks. So let's just keep it on the agenda. We'll keep going through it. In the meantime, thank you for what you're doing to control it, Mr. Fox.
Yes, thank you.
Well, I like them. I get as much enjoyment out of them, so glad to help.
All righty. Any other questions? If not, we can move on to item 10 for our reports correspondence. And since Chad's with us, anybody has any specifics that they want to discuss off his letter, memorandum? We have Steve with us too, so any questions on his report?
John, I'll just give an update on maybe one thing that Mike, I don't believe, touched on in his report. We started surveying today on the Orchard and Forest sanitary sewer replacement project. If Borough Council recalls, there was a grant that was issued to the borough for some of that work. So again, with the county provided the borough finally with a signed copy of the agreement that then provided authorization for my office to move forward with the bid package. And again, that started today. I want to thank Steve for his help today. Our surveyors had some problems getting, I believe, 2 manhole covers off. It's not uncommon in the borough for that to be a problem. They reached out to us in the office. I reached out to Steve, and within a few minutes, I believe he was out there helping them. So thank you, Steve, for that.
Yeah, no problem, Chad.
Anyone? Questions? Everybody knows we've got a new public works person that started. It'll be time to crank out the mowers, right, Steve?
I'm thinking, looking at the parks right now, John, I'm thinking next week might be looking pretty good.
Okay, love
Well-
those dandelions.
All gonna depend on the weather.
All righty. We're gonna end it there briefly. Nothing, no action items tonight. There will be executive session.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Thank you.
John, we do have an executive session.
Okay, thanks. We're adjourned.
Hey, Jane.
Good night, Jane.
See you, James.
Thank you.
Chad.